So over the last few months, I've been playing the Devil May Cry games, and Hideki Kamiya is the director of Devil May Cry, the first game, and he also directed Bayonetta, which is probably what he's mostly known for, apart from Okami, Beautiful Joe, and the original Resident Evil 2. And Bayonetta is a game that's very similar, gameplay-wise, to the Devil May Cry games. It's an action game which has a heavy focus on combat, and I must say, Bayonetta is pretty awesome. Similar to the DMC games, Bayonetta is all about being stylish and performing these big, lavish combos. And also Bayonetta likes to strut around, so that's nice too. So the big thing about Bayonetta is combat, and she has melee weapons and guns as well. And by guns, I mean a total of 4. 2 that she wields in her hands, and 2 that she has strapped to her boots. That's pretty awesome when you really think about it. But she also has melee weapons. I mean, look at this. You can do stuff like this in Bayonetta. That's really all you need to sell this game. And naturally, Bayonetta will perform these really intricate dance moves, and she'll basically contort her body to maximize efficiency in regards to combat. Bayonetta will get magic meter from defeating various enemies, and with this magic meter she can perform torture attacks that allow her to basically put the enemies into like medieval torture devices and immediately take them out. And she can do this to bosses as well. And the combat is all about being stylish. Of course, there's medium and heavy attacks, and the game really encourages you to experiment with the combat and try out different things. Whether it's tapping the buttons in a different order, holding as opposed to tapping, or even having delayed inputs where you tap a button, then you wait a few frames, and then you tap it again. It's a really interesting and intriguing combat system, and you can absolutely experiment with this, especially because Bayonetta can actually upgrade herself at the gates of hell with Rodan. And she can buy new weapons, and she can upgrade her combat abilities, and that really adds to the intricacies of the combat system. So I could imagine if somebody really wanted to learn all the ins and outs of the combat system, there's quite a complex system here, so it would definitely take a while. And one of the coolest things about Bayonetta is her Wicked Weave. Wicked Weave are basically combo enders that do a lot of damage, and Bayonetta uses her hair as a weapon, which is very similar to like Millia Rage from Guilty Gear, or even like Sindel from Mortal Kombat. I think the idea of a character using their hair as a weapon is just awesome. I think it's really cool. And this game is quite tough at times too, so they really want you to prioritize defense and using witch time to slow down time and get big free combos, especially against the bosses, because some of these bosses are certainly no pushovers at all. And all the enemies will attack you at the same time, so they really do keep you on your toes. You can't just sit there and focus on one enemy at a time. The enemies will attack you, they'll flank you, they'll sneak up from behind, so you have to be very mindful of that. And overall, the combat in Bayonetta was really fun, and it was great to just experiment with different things, whether it's different inputs, different weapons, or maybe just unlocking a new ability and seeing how effective it can be in certain situations. It was great too, and the bosses are all unique, and they're interesting too, and the bosses are designed really wonderfully. For the story, Bayonetta takes place in the fictional city of Vigrid, which is in Europe, and she was awakened from a 500-year sleep in which she has no memory of who she is or where she's come from. But she does have a rival named John, and John is an Umbra witch just like Bayonetta herself. Over the course of the game, you run into characters like Luca, a man who met Bayonetta when he was a boy, whenever she had awoken from her sleep, Cereza, who is a very young girl who basically might be Bayonetta just as a child, or at least like a second version of Bayonetta. And Rodan, as I mentioned earlier, a man who has a bar that he operates to give Bayonetta weapons and upgrades. He basically makes the weapons for her. And the side characters in this game are really intriguing. I think John was definitely the most interesting, because she is like Bayonetta's rival. She's like equal to her almost, and you do battle her on a couple of occasions and stand by her side from time to time. So I thought the dynamic between those two characters were really interesting. She really is sort of like Bayonetta's link to the past. And there was this big thing where the world used to be run by two factions, the Umbra Witches and their light counterparts, the Lumen Sages. So there was a balance of light and dark that ran the world. And Bayonetta is the last of the Umbra Witches. She's like the last one that remains. And she is basically the most powerful person in this entire universe. I mean, seriously, do you see who she's fighting right now? Bayonetta could take down anybody. They pose basically no threat to her. You could put anybody in front of Bayonetta. She could probably beat Goku if you put him in front of her. But either way, Bayonetta knows she's bad, and she wants you to know that she's bad too. She is serving, if you get what I'm saying. This game certainly taught me the definition of that term, so that's very, very nice. Bayonetta is such a cool character too. I think she's awesome. I'm not gonna say she's one of my favorites of all time, but in terms of coolness factor, Bayonetta is absolutely in the top 10 in terms of coolest video game characters. Probably up there with like Dante, I guess, which is funny because Kamiya directed both Bayonetta and the first Devil May Cry. I also forgot to mention that Bayonetta can turn into different animals with Beast Within. Like, she can turn into bats and evade enemies and stuff like that. I thought that was pretty cool, too. But overall, I definitely enjoyed Bayonetta. This game was really, really cool. I enjoyed experimenting with the intricacies of the combat system. The side characters are cool. I thought the story was interesting. But most importantly, Bayonetta herself, the star, she is really, really cool. 7 out of 10.